Yiboneh, Yiboneh Hamikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh Hamikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome home to Torah. A warm welcome. We're in Parashat Devarim. Parashat Devarim almost always falls on the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. It is Moses' his last tzavah, his last will and testament, so to speak. He wants to leave the Jewish people with some corrective measures. He wants to make sure if anything wasn't clear, now's the time to ask your questions. Now's the time to get everything, all your ducks in order, as we would say. It is tochacha. Chazal tell us that one should not give tochacha over and over and over again. It's not good for you and it's not good for the person. So the best time to give it is before you die. Why is that? Because once you give it, you're not going to give it over and over again. But I think that if you know the person is really requesting this of you to make a serious change in your life right before they die, I think, it's just my opinion, that you'll probably take it seriously, especially if it's, a close friend, someone you respect on their deathbed. This is the thing that they want, this wisdom they want to bequeath you with. I think that you'll also take it a lot more seriously. Let's say you'll take it to heart. At least you'll think about it, that it was meaningful enough to him or her to make time for you before they died. And this is what Moses does. And as we will see in the first pasuk and Rashi, that these places that are described, they're like triangulating where we were, is very odd because some of these places don't even exist. And Rashi says, if you want to look at the first Rashi, let's look at source number 1. These are the words which Moses spoke to all of Israel. Ela Devarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael. He spoke to all of Israel, which is also going to be significant. Rashi says, since these are the words are of rebuke. What does Moses do? He enumerates all the places that they angered Hashem. So what Moses does not do, he doesn't mention the sin. He's using hints. The place you were in, to the place you were in, to the place you were in, and doesn't even mention the sin, meaning explicitly, because you sent the spies, because there you did the ego, because there you complained. He doesn't mention all those words. He just mentions the place. It's like a triangulation, as the verse says. On that side of the Jordan in the desert, in the plain opposite the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel, Lavan and Chatzerot, and Dizahav. Some of these places don't even exist. But we'll see, because it's very interesting. Even though the Yakar is not speaking about it here, the Yakar does speak about it in the Parsha. Okay, let's preface this again. What we do is we use the Hebrew source sheets, and I encourage you to use them. There's a link down below. You'll get a black and white copy. You go to the link down below. You can listen to other shirim on this Parsha. We're using a book called the Devorim. It's written by the Yakar. But what the Yakar mentions in his famous book called the Yakar, and I encourage you to listen to that shir below. Actually, it's not just one shir. It's many different shirim. Is that during the month of Tammuz, which is the zodiac sign of a crab walks backwards or sideways. You ever see a crab? He doesn't walk straight forward. He's kind of walking to the side or backwards. Because what did the crab do? They turned their backs. What did Am Yisrael do? The chet ego, the sin of the golden calf. We turned our backs towards Hashem. And what about Leo, the month of Av? The lion tears apart its friend. And that, God forbid, that's what we do. That's what we have done. The sin of despise was, on a certain level, only a symptom of the deep-rooted hatred we had towards God and towards our fellow, because man is created in the image of God. And the lion tears apart. And so these two months in which the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av fall in, the tikkun is basically to love God and to love your friend. Right? You have to, as Hashem Elokecha, to love God, to make a tikkun for our turning our back towards God, and you have to rech chomocha, to love your friend as yourself, and that would make a tikkun for the hatred. What we mentioned over there is that we actually thought God hated us. At least that's the words we said. Okay, there's a pasuk that says, we thought God hated us. That's why He took us out of Egypt and caused us to die in the desert. I mean, can you imagine? It couldn't have been further from the truth how much God loved us, that He took us out of Egypt, the pit hole of the world, the armpit of the world. Right? Took us out of Egypt and brought us to this luscious, beautiful place called Eretz Yisrael. And yet we said He hates us because it's called transformation, it's called projecting. We hated ourselves. We have such a low image of ourselves. And therefore, most people, right, most religions, I shouldn't say people, most religions, they create God in their own image. Okay? We're creating an image of God. Okay, so if we understand who God is, He really loves us, we would actually come to love ourselves. And we have to be somehow in balance between knowing that we really have a lot of potential and we are a piece of God and there's nothing to hate about God. Okay, that's all past. Now we're into this parsha in the Ir Giborim, and he begins by bringing, I would call it a medrash, but it's in Gemara Erechin. It's a Gemara, and it basically starts out, if you want to look in number 2 on the source sheet, Rabbi Tarfon, you know what, I'm going to read the Hebrew, it's a little bit different than the English. B'Gemara Amar Rabbi Tarfon, Tameani, he's a little bit surprised, Im Yesh Bador Mishiodea Eich Mochin. He basically, in that generation, 2,000 years ago, who even knows the way of giving tochacha, whether it's the giving or the receiving? As you'll see, Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Tameani Im Yesh Bador, he's wondering if there's even someone in the generation. We're looking at the Hebrew sheets. Look, we're looking at the Hebrew sheets, first page. If there is somebody in this generation who even knows how to give lahokiach, to rebuke. What is rebuke? It basically, firstly, you have to give it out of love. You want to correct, reproof, to prove what is the most efficient or correct way. That's all that rebuke really is. And if you don't do it out of love, you're not doing it right. Rabbi Akiva was very surprised if someone even knows how to give rebuke. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Tameani, I'd be very surprised if somebody in this generation can even receive it. It's very difficult for most people to receive tochacha. I'm sure you've all been on the receiving end. Well, guess what he says? It's a very interesting phrase. Im adam oimer tu kesem mi beineinecha. I'll tell you what the rest of it is. If someone comes up to you and says, you know, you have a little splinter between your eyes, what do people say? You're telling me you got a beam sticking out of your forehead, which basically means someone is confronting you and saying, you know, you're doing a little bit of a mistake or a sin, and you turn around and say, who are you to tell me? You're a bigger sinner than me. Isn't that what people respond? I mean, even if we don't do it, we want to do it, right? So this is a big problem. So that's how the Yakar begins with the Gemara from Erechin, page 16b. And you can see that, if you want, on number 2 on the source sheet. Now we're going to go on. He brings down a Gemara. Oh no, sorry. Yidua davar mufarsem l'kol. He tells you this is something well known. Everybody knows this. Shekol mokiach tzarich leida derech asher yelchu bo hamochichin. That anyone who gives rebuke, they need to know how to give it. What's the way? What's the procedure? V'akulam tzarich, and this is it. We're going to come up with 3 principles today. Believe me, he goes on for pages, but we're going to just condense it down to 45 minutes. Everybody who wants to give rebuke, the very first thing is tzarich lekashet atzmo techila. You have to ornament yourself. You have to beautify yourself. You have to get your own ducks in order. How can you give rebuke? No, it's not going to be accepted by the other person. Okay, and we're going to see an example here, brought down in Gemara Baba Basra, 60a. You can find that also on the source sheets in number 3, just in the middle part, but I'll read it from the Hebrew instead. Basically, you have Rav Ami, he had a tree. Rav Ami had a tree. And it was leaning, even though it was in his courtyard or in his property, it leaned into the public thoroughfare. Okay? It was Noitel Rishus Rabim. And there was another guy who also had the same issue. Okay? Gnami Ila Noitel Rishus Rabim. Now, the people of the Rishus Rabim were Ma'akdin Olav. They were Rishus Rabim Ma'akdin Olav. They were upset. They were preventing him from allowing it to continue to grow. So they had a court case. They were very upset. As Lakami the Rabbi, this particular guy who had a tree that protruded into the thoroughfare came before the judge, came to Rabbi Yanai. And he said to him, what do I do? These people are complaining. You know what Rav Yanai said? Now, Rav Yanai had the same issue. He also had a tree that was sticking out into the public thoroughfare. But he still had that tree sticking out in the public thoroughfare. How is he, as a judge, supposed to tell this guy to cut his tree down? So what did he say to him? Amrle, zil idnan v'salam achar. Go right now. I want you to come back tomorrow. Let's leave it for now. Come back tomorrow. Belayla k'tziyah, in the middle of the night, I don't know if it's 10 at night or 12 at night, but during the night at some time, he cut his own tree down from protruding into the thoroughfare, public thoroughfare. Lamachar amrle zil kutz. I'll just tell you what happened, because the rest is not written here. The guy says, what do? I came back the next day. What am I supposed to do? Rav Yanai says, you have to cut it. He says, well, 1 second. Rabbi, you also have one like that. So the rabbi says, very smart, well, go check my tree out. If my tree is cut, you'll cut yours. And if my tree's not cut, leave it. But that was his response. So the Yakar continues. There's a Gemara in Kedushin. This is a little bit on the mystical side. In Gemara Kedushin, page 40b, Tzadikim, righteous people. What exactly are they like analogous to? How do you describe a tzaddik in this world, a righteous person in this world, as an Elon, as a tree? And there's many chazal, many reasons to say such a thing, but it's a tree that shekula omedis b'makam tahara. The tree itself, when it says kulo, it probably means majority of it or almost all of it. As you'll see, the majority of the tree or almost all of the tree was standing in a pure place. But its branches or extremities were leaning towards the place of tuma, a place of impurity. What should the tzaddik do? What does the tzaddik do? The righteous person is niktzas noifo. He'll cut those extremities, he'll prune them, right? He'll cut them, so that the majority, even a bigger majority, almost the entire thing, is now standing in a pure place. The Rishoyim behefakzeh, the Gemara over there in Kedushin says, by the evil people, it works the opposite. They're like a tree, and they're standing in an impure place. And they have some extremities into the pure place, and of course, they end up cutting their extremities out of their branches out of the pure place, and they're standing in an entirely impure place. Rama shetzadi kula holik b'derech tamim. This is like the idea that there's a hint that the tzaddikim, they're always walking, they're always trying to walk, they're attempting to walk. They walk in the way of tamim. innocence and purity and in correct ways. Zulat, now keep this in mind, if we all want to be tzaddikim, Zulat shelefamim hu noitem min derech mitzad hitgabruta chaymer. Sometimes, meaning occasionally, not often, but sometimes, these tzaddikim who are going in the straight path, the pure path, get sidelined. They're noite min derech, to the side of hitgabruta chaymer. I would call it where either they get into physicality, or the physicality overpowers them. Somehow they're leaning in that direction. The Yakar says, I already discussed this earlier on in my works in the first gate. We spoke about Rabbi Yanai. Yeah, Rabbi Yanai, he was, right, we said he was like a tree, Havile tree, and he had a tree. Kolomer, what does it mean that the tzaddik is like a tree, but he had a tree? What are we talking about here? Shayat tzaddik, v'hayinim sholi ilan. Exactly like we said already, he is a tzaddik who was compared to a tree, which stands in a place that's entirely pure. Interesting, I mentioned that it's sitting in his own property. Rishus hayachid as opposed to Rishus harabim. These words are like code words. Rishus hayachid is my own private domain. However, we know that there's 5 names of the soul, or there's 5 levels of the soul. The highest level of the soul is Yechidah. Yechidah. And that is actually completely unified with Hashem on that level. Okay? So, Rishus harabim, on the other hand, that is the public thoroughfare. That's going to be compared to the Yetzer Hara. And we'll see, I think we already alluded to it. Dahainu b'rishus haneshama. So when that tree is in his own domain, and it's called a rishus hayachid, he's in touch with his yechidah, the neshama. Lefi she'ein la oizrim. He doesn't need any help from anything outside of his own personal connection with God. He is empowered by God, his connection with God, and he needs no ozrim, the kol hishtadluta b'siat ratzon habor yisrach, and all of his efforts are only to do the will of God. That's what the tzaddik, the yechida, is all about. But one second, noitho noita lamakom tuma. He does have a physical body. He does have, and that's what it means, the extremities, the branches. It's the physical, arms and legs. That does run, right? Sometimes slowly or sometimes fast in the direction of the Rishus harabim. Noifa noita l'makam tuma hain Rishus harabim, meaning to say the Rishus hayetzer hara. It's connected to sensuality, right? The physical body. And that is called Rishus harabim. Now listen to this, unbelievable. This is from Koheles Rabbah, but I'm going to try to sum it up. It says, it brings a pasuk from Mishlei. That's Proverbs 14:20. Look in number 5 on the source sheet. Number 5 on the source sheet. The poor man is hated even by his friend, but the friends of the rich are many. We're going to find out that the tzaddik, or the neshama, is called a poor man. He doesn't get help from friends, but the rich man, they ashir rabim. What I wanted to take you was to a very interesting midrash in Koheles Rabbah, and it is based on what you can see in number 6. If you look at number 6, there's a pasuk in Koheles, Ecclesiastes chapter 9. It's 3 verses, 14, 15, and 16. We spoke about this poor man. Well, let's see what the verse says. There was a small city with few people in it, and a great king came upon it and surrounded it and built over it with great bulwarks. And there was found therein a poor wise man. You see that? He was poor, but he was wise. And he extricated the city through his wisdom. But no man remembered that poor man. And I said, wisdom is better than might. But the wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heard. It's very, very interesting, and I think it would take too long to go through the whole idea, but I'll try to do it really quick. What does it mean, Ir Katana, small town? That's the body of the person. What does it mean, and his inhabitants are few? Those are the limbs of the person that inhabit the body. What does it mean a mighty king came upon it? That's the evil inclination that attempts to ensnare the person to sin. Why is the Yetzer Hara called great? Does anybody know? Obviously, we all know it's great. But wait till you hear this. When you're born with a Yetzer Hara, but not a Yetzer Tov, where it's incubated. It's only when you turn 13, for women 12. There's an awakening of the Yetzer HaTov. So your Yetzer Hara is always going to be 13 years older. We're 12 years older. That's why it's great. That's the terminology that's used here. It's more experienced, it's older. The word gadol is used in that context as well. And the pasuk said, and it surrounded it and built great siege works over it. So this is the Yetzer HaTov. And there's found in the city a poor wise man. This refers to the good inclination, the Yetzer HaTov. Now, why is the good inclination called poor? Wait till you hear this. Unbelievable. It's called poor with the word the yud miskein. Mamish poor. Why is it called poor? Miskein. Because only human beings have it, and most human beings don't even use it. I want to tell you, Rav Noach Weinberg taught us, we're creating the image of God. It says in Pirkei Avos, God loved you so much. He created you in His image. He loves you so much, He created you in His image. But what does that help? It says He had an extra gesture of love. And He let you know. See, the Torah itself says you have free will, choose life. The Torah itself is the instruction manual. So not only is it fantastic that He created me in His image, but He let me know. Because think about it. The example the Rosh Yeshiva used to give. Let's say you see a miskein, a poor, destitute person, eating out of the garbage. And you go and you watch him and you see him behind the Walmart, wherever, and he's picking out new clothes from irregulars or whatever. He's going next to Dunkin' Donuts, picking out some stale donuts. And you put $1 million into his duffel bag. And he goes around for the next however many days and nights he goes. Did you change his life just by putting the $1 million in his duffel bag? You might have thought so, but nothing changed until he's told, do you realize you have $1 million? He can go every night to a Motel 6, get a hot shower, except during the 9 days, right? He can eat meat every day of the week, except for the 9 days. Right? He could have a life. So until you know, that is like the secret of secrets. Not only does God love you so much, He created you in His image, but He gave you free will. He let you know that you have it. The knowledge of it is unbelievable. Anyway, so why is the person poor? We're talking about the Yetzer HaTov. Because most people, we're only talking about human beings, have it, and most human beings don't even tap into it. It's called poor. It's underused? Is that what you would call it? And what does it mean? The phrase, who by his wisdom saved the city, that alludes to the fact that anyone who follows the advice of his Yetzer HaTov is saved from sin and also from the punishment of Gehenna. I want to just refocus back where we left off because I want to give you like a little bit of overall. In order to give tochacha, number one, you have to fix yourself first. That we are almost finished that point. There's two more points to be made. And the other points to be made are very, very important. And we're going to see them inside. And that is, number 2, is that when you give it over, don't be negative. Don't be, obviously, giving rebuke can be quite traumatic. Don't be only negative. Praise the person. Raise them up. They'll be more accepting, number 1. Number 2. And the third thing is, don't embarrass them. So let's continue with this idea of fixing yourself first, and then hear the other ideas. Ubir Inyan, we're still on the first page. On the left side, the explanation of this idea is, Rabbi Yanai hayat tzaddik amar. Rabbi Yanai was a complete tzaddik, except for Zula shelefamim hayat noitel reshus, I got lost. Reshus hayetzara, meaning reshus harabim. Sometimes he veered off. And we saw that there was another person who also had this tree, also did the same idea. Pirush, have od adam echad. The explanation was there was another person who had the same issue. He was also a tzaddik just like him. He also sometimes swayed from the direct, straight path. And this is what it means. That the people were trying to prevent them, meaning ma'akvin alav milelek bederech mitzvah. The reshus harabim. We said that is the what? The Yetzer Hara, the Satan. He's trying to get you to stop doing mitzvahs. He's trying to prevent you from going in the way of mitzvahs. Now it says the other guy went to Rav Yanai for advice. That's what you're supposed to do. You go to the Chacham. Also, lekami the Rav Yanai l'shoel. The guy went to Rav Yanai to ask him the most important questions of life. Al iviyutatok the takein ma'olav. He wanted to ask him about the corruption or the brokenness of his state in order to fix his action, the consequences. He wanted to correct things. Rav Yanai lo ratza lahashiv lo. Rav Yanai did not want to answer him until what? Ad shayimataken atzmo techila. Until he fixed himself first. And what did he say? Zil idna v'sol machar. Go right now. Come back tomorrow. Balayla kitzia hanof hahu. And in the night, he cut off that particular branch. V'hirhur tshuva belibo. He thought of tshuva in his heart. Now we're going to get into this idea of speaking Torah and actually changing your actions. So in the meantime, this Talmid Chacham, he did tshuva. We're talking about Rav Yanai. V'naka b'layla al haderech. This idea, it says specifically at night, he cut the tree. Wait till you hear this. There's a Gemara in Brachos, 19a. You can also see it on the source sheet number 8. And it says like this. If you see a Talmid Chacham do an Avera at night, you can already assume the next day the person did tshuva. Now this is a particular thing between him and God. If he did some kind of damage or stole from a human being, you don't have to assume he did tshuva until you see that he returned the article or made restitution. But it's between him and God, and the guy's a real Talmid Chacham, you know for sure that he did tshuva. There's another idea that nobody goes to sleep at night in Yerushalayim without doing tshuva. But that's a special, something you breathe in here in Israel, especially in Yerushalayim. But anyway, that's what the Gemara says. Gemara Brachos, Imri ita Talmid Chacham, Oiver Aver Balayla, Al Tichaher Acharav B'yom. Don't think he didn't do tshuva. Think he did tshuva. Now, Yidbarbi said, it's clear from this. Shekod Moira Derech. Are you all listening, my children? Anyone who's a Moira Derech, a guide, a teacher, a mentor, a big brother, anybody who's trying to help somebody else, to the masses. Tzarik lekashet atzmo techila. You gotta fix yourself first. Maybe you'll be more effective, but very much you'll be either ineffective. V'hu derech harishon. This is the first of three ways. Hamokiach shebo yochaz kol mokiach umadrich. That anybody who's going to rebuke, and it happens to be one of the 613 mitzvahs, you must acquire these character traits, hold on to them, as we are discussing. Number one is to fix yourself first. Bet, tzarich hamokiach, shelo ledaber devarav divrei kantor. I like the word contrary, but it means contour means to agitate, to anger, to upset the other side. The opposite of being friendly or pleasant. That's why I think if the opposite of friendly or pleasant is you're like always a contrarian. Everything's an argument, But anyway, the word is contour. You shouldn't have all your words as an agitating and instigating the person you're trying to give rebuke to. Rak tzarich miktzat devrav derech shevach v'ritzoy negdan. But at least some of your words, I don't know what the percentage is, a certain amount of your words should be words of praise and appeasement. Somehow ritzoy, it should be pleasing to him. Ka'amram zal, like it says in Pirkei Avot. Wait till you hear this. I'm sure you've all heard this. It's in 117. Look at number 9 on the source sheet. I'll read it. His son Rav Shimon would say, all my life I've been raised among the wise, and I have found nothing better for the body than silence. What does that mean? The essential thing is not study, but deed. And anyone who speaks excessively brings on sin. Shimon ben Oimer, kol yamai gadalti bein hachamim. All my life I grew up amongst the sages. V'lo matzati leguf toiv mishtika. The best thing I found for my physical being was quiet. Now just imagine we're talking about rebuke. Okay? The less you say, sometimes the better. Sometimes the better. And if you're talking to the wrong guy, it could be that he'll kick you or curse you. Right? So, and anyone who speaks excessively brings on sin. Remember, the idea is going to be that if you embarrass him, which we'll see the third thing, you're bringing sin upon yourself. So be very careful learn about how to give tochacha before you go out and do it. But let's go back into the Yakar. Ka'amram kol marabi Devarim mevichet. Anybody who speaks excessively brings upon him sin. Again, try to think he's going to talk about someone who gives tochacha. Speaking about it. Let's just see. Ramzu mizeh derech hamochichim l'zulatam. Yep. He says this is hinting to the idea of people who give other people rebuke. Says Rabbi Shimon in Pirkei Avot, as he said, Kol yemei gidalti ben chamim. All of my days, I grew up. I grew up in the house of sages. V'lo matzati leguf toiv ela shtika. The best thing I found for my body was quietness. Now, what about the soul? When it comes to the soul, should speak. In fact, when God created our soul, it says in the beginning of in Breshit that He put into us a living soul, but I shouldn't say but. And Onkelos translates that as a talking soul. That living soul, nefesh chaya, is a ruach malalala, a talking spirit. That's what we are. So when it comes to shtika, if it's about Torah, you better start opening your mouth. If it's about other things, maybe you should limit your mouth. But this is what it says. Hizkir dafka guf. Yeah, the shtika, the quietness is good for the guf, not for the neshama. Lefish Rabbi Shimon medaber hamoneya melahokiach rabin. So what Rabbi Shimon was speaking about was preventing people from giving rebuke to the masses. She'oisa shtika eno toive elagufa. That type of quietness is good for the body. Shelo yikalalu oisav yib'atu bo. So people do not curse him or kick him, beat him up, putting your body into a precarious situation. V'yomru mihu zeh arev legeshes lo kiach luzulato. They're going to basically say, who put you in charge? Who made you the sheriff? Right? Who gave you the authority? What are you, the halacha police? You have this authority you're responsible to reach out and give rebuke to other people. You know what they're going to say? They're going to say a lot of negative things about you. They're not only going to say, you have a small splinter between your eyes. They're going to say you got a beam. They're going to be talking about all of your sins. If you got anything in the closet, it's going to come out. Amnam shtika kazu eino toive ela neshama. So this quiet, it's not necessarily good it's good for the body, but not necessarily for the neshama. Ki kol yir Elokim, because anyone who has a proper, healthy fear of God, al yimnem elokiach, af legadolim, he should not stop. He shouldn't be prevented from giving rebuke even to people much bigger than him, even to the greatest of the generation. But it's under a certain condition. When is that? I'm sorry. Bizman sharoa she'ein hador mitnaheg kshar. That's only if you see the entire generation acting improperly. Obviously, if you have Gedolim and doing their job, and you know your space and you know their place. But if you see the whole generation, I don't know what words to use, the opposite of kosher, right? They're going in a way that's not proper. My opinion is what he's trying to say is you have to give rebuke to the Gedolim to give rebuke. They're not guilty of the sin that everyone's doing. At least I would hope not. Okay? Some say, yeah, if the people are acting that way, it must be because they're acting that way. I don't know. I won't go that far. I would say there's something wrong. They're not giving the rebuke. So you're only giving them rebuke. They should give rebuke. Okay, maybe I'm taking it too far. Maybe I'm naive. But how can it be that the Gedolim are so far off? Well, we'll see. He's going to speak about how you can see how far the Gedolim could be off. Hainu dafka be'inyan hara'ah k'bnei Aaron. Question is, what does it mean by the bnei Aaron? Are we talking about Nadav and Avihu with the foreign fire? They were paskening, or by Pinchas who did pasken. But anyway, that's what he says. Zesh Amru, it says in Pirkei Avot, we said it. It said lo midrash ikar. You can get people, he's going to describe, who get up there and they're great orators. And by the way, the Yakar was the greatest orator in his generation. He took over for the Rav of Prague, the Maharal of Prague. He was the next. And all the Sfardim, whoever listened to him, they knew, well, first of all, the legend is that he was about Tshuva. He didn't grow up with Yiddish. And therefore, when they heard him speak, his Hebrew was impeccable. Whereas all the other people who spoke, the Gedolim, spoke with a broken Hebrew and mainly in Yiddish. He did not speak in that way. The Sfardim held he must be one of us because he speaks a perfect Hebrew. And Baruch Hashem, we're learning. This is where most of my Hebrew has been learned from, the Yakar. So the last thing I said was that Lo HaMidrash Ikar, right, says in Pirkei Avot, it's not the learning that's the most important thing, but what the consequences, what comes out of it. She'ein hadoyer sheker ela bizman she'oisim maisa. You know what? Psak halacha. What is being done? Look at the results. Now, the top left side of Reish Yud, he's describing this idea, oh Yomar lo midrash ikar, this idea that maybe we're saying that the learning itself is inconsequential if there's no follow-through. And that's really what he's saying. Many of these speakers, they're not giving musar. They're talking nice. They're doing pilpul. They're showing people how deep you can go. But they're not changing people's lives. Nobody's being moved, and their intention is not to move them. Their intention is to be accepted by the public and speak what they want to hear. That's what he says. Remez al manhig anshe doreno riiti shleimin v'chein rabim mitatfim bitzachot. They speak eloquently. Lashon Adarush. Oimnim lidrosh l'rabim. They get up there in front of everybody. Ein kavanatam klal lahokicham b'divrei musar. They're not trying to get these words that are going to transform people's lives. That's not their intent. Rak levarim mararim. They just want to clarify interesting statements. V'derek drush shehayed doiresh hu mekabel rabim. So the people would accept the words or accept them. I think it means them. Yishamru, and they would say, Kame gavra chachamu. How smart this guy is. Wow, he's a gever. He's smart. And who yodea likshov machshavos becharoshes eitzachayim. And he can really do pilpul. He can dig deep and make many rows like in a field with his words. And he can also tell you the opposite if that's what he wanted to tell you. He could mix it any way you want. They were just really there to show off. Okay, so just to sum up the next few lines, that he's really showing that the people, these famous preachers, if you want to call them that, Magid, they were not at all really interested if people were listening and they're going to change and turn away from the evil ways on account of this or for that. And he says this is unfortunately very common in this 450 years ago. He says the worst part is the people don't even know. They're not even aware that they're walking in darkness. Okay? His Hebrew is like this. Udvar hazeh anshe dorenu lo yadu v'lo yavinu b'chashecha yitzhalachu. They're not even aware, of the darkness they're walking in. And Chazal tell us, again, lo hamidrash ikar, ela maisa. It's not the learning that's the most important. Believe me, it's important. But it's not the most important, it's the outcome. Who yagid la'am ma'aseyim aroim befratot, that what this person should be doing is telling the people about their evil ways, specifically, in detail. Just like we find by Moses. This is the whole point. Moses is telling over to the people, la'am, kol ha'makomos, all of the different places. He's not even telling them the sins, he's hinting to them. He's telling them the places where you sinned, where you angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Where you angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shahokisu l'Kadosh Baruch Hu aleim, v'okicham aleim, kashi yizbar b'samuch. And he gave the rebuke to them as we're about to describe. Remember, it said in Pirkei Avot, Kol hamarbe b'Devarim. Anybody who increases their words, that's not necessarily a good thing. And we said this was Remez l'mash z'kana shelo yirbe l'saper b'genut ha'am yoter midai. We already mentioned not to increase speaking negativity. Don't speak negatively about the people more than is necessary. Rak katsat b'derek ritzoy. Only a little bit, only enough. It should be more appeasing. Shem yirba o mitog zeh yavo shitnagdu lo ha'am. And because if you do increase, then what's going to happen is everyone's going to be against you. You're not going to be, your words are not going to be accepted. They're going to speak negatively about you. Not that you have to worry about that, but of course, by the 2.5 tribes on the other side of the Jordan, so we know that there was a miscommunication. They really had a lot of sheep, and they wanted that area, and they meant to say, we're going to go and fight with you, but we want to come back to this land. Instead, it came out wrong. We want to stay here with our kids and everything like that, and that would have broke the morale. God tells them right then, you have to be naki. When you speak, you have to be clean. You can't, You can't garner chashashot. You can't do things where people are going to think bad about you. It's very important. Don't do that. And if you begin to become this, I don't know what you want to call it, this halakha policeman, believe me, they're going to find all your own skeletons in your closet, okay? And they're going to speak genuta about you. Who made the chait, and you're going to bring sin upon yourself. Hainu shemevi sheizkaru et chetav, because they're going to start mentioning your sins, and that is understood by those who are intelligent. And the last couple lines is Gimel, Tzari Kol HaMokiach, anybody who plans to give rebuke, which it's one of the 613 commandments. Remember what it says, right? We're going to see soon in Leviticus 19:17. So basically it says, V'lo b'ferush, when you give rebuke, speak in a hinted way. Just like Moses said only the places where they sin, not the sin themselves, not the sin itself. Lo b'ferush. Why? Shelo yidbaishu ha'am. So you don't embarrass them. Al derech, like it says in the pasuk in Leviticus 19:17, number 10 on the source sheet, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. By the way, what's the psychology? You think the person is doing a sin, so automatically you hate him in your heart. I mean, the truth is that every Jew who sins is hurting me. Every Jew that does a mitzvah is benefiting me. It's true. We're all one. We're all being judged. If I can help somebody get out of doing a sin, it's going to benefit me. So shouldn't I try to do it in the best possible way to be, what's the word I'm looking for? To be not just successful, to be effective. So, number one, instead of hating him, I should tell him how I feel. No, not necessarily. What I should do is find out if what I'm perceiving is even true. 99% of the time, what we perceive to be happening might not even be happening. Meaning, we see what he's doing, but there could be a reasonable explanation. There could be. So if the person is a tzaddik gamor, we have to always judge favorably. If he's a rasha gamor, he's absolute evil, we have no obligation to even think positively. Al pi chasidus, and opening up the taps in Shemayim, there's such a concept. But for the most part, average people, it's midas chasidus, it's a positive thing to think positively about what they're doing. Meaning, to judge them favorably. Like we said, maybe I don't know the situation. So you talk to the person and say, listen, I want to have a conversation with you. Maybe you can explain to me. No accusations. I don't know. I didn't see the whole thing from beginning to end. I only saw this little part. Could you explain to me what was happening? And the guy could break down and say, I'm so sorry, I sinned. The guy could say, no, you have it all wrong. I was doing this, that, and the other thing. You missed the first part, you missed the last part, or you don't know that I'm a diabetic, I'm allowed to eat on a fast day, or whatever it is, right? I went to McDonald's to go to the bathroom. I had, had to go. Or I needed a Coke, or whatever, you know what I mean? It's called an explanation. So you won't have the hate in your heart when you realize you were wrong, right? 98% of the times we got it wrong. So number one is just having the conversation. In order not to have hate in your heart, you should have a conversation. You shall surely rebuke your fellow, and you shall not bear the sin on his account. Meaning, if you embarrass him, you will end up carrying the sin. This shir is technically over. I just want to mention again, we gave so many shirim on this subject. Look down into the YouTube channel, into the subject, the description box. You will see other shirim, and I encourage you to go to them. If you want to be on our email list, then send me an email, and we will send you the English and the Hebrew sheets. We encourage you to learn Hebrew and follow the Hebrew sheets along the way. This is like Erev Tisha B'Av. This hopefully won't even be the Tisha B'Av that we always think of, but it should be a brand new experience that we've been looking forward to. All the exiles coming home, the rebuilding of the base of Mikdash, right? The Mashiach being revealed, knowing who he is, having a relationship with God in a totally different way than we've ever had it before, and it can all happen in just 12 minutes. And we're looking forward to that time, aren't we? And so we say, Shabbat Shalom, have a meaningful day, whether it's celebratory or, as we know, reading about things that are not going to happen anymore. But we will always be reading Eicha anyway. Eicha is part of Tanakh. It's a sacred part of Tanakh. We will always be reading it and learning about it. And there's a lot of history. And hopefully history is changing dramatically soon in our days. So have a good Shabbos, Shabbos Chazon. Have even a greater Shabbos, Shabbos Nachamu. And have a meaningful fast. So have a good Shabbos and have a great life. We'll see you next week.
Yiboneh,